Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, Pinterest, a variety of places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm excited tonight to talk about a lesson I used with kindergarten in the first week that did not fall apart and worked pretty well and was a fun part of our lesson. But I wanted to share about how I used that lesson with kids, balance high, balance low, and how I sort of lengthened out that lesson so it wasn't just 20 seconds and then like done, because balance high, balance low is not a long song. So I wanted to share about how I'm using that in my classroom. I'll also share about a cool new book and a cool new bulletin board. So all coming up. But really quick, if you're curious about anything I share in these videos, you want to hear about more about the resources, the books, whatever that I share, there's a whole blog or a whole page on my blog dedicated to the things I talk about. So at makemomentsmatter.org under the video tab, or wherever you're watching or listening to this, just click on the link at the bottom of the bio, the caption, you should be able to find it. Also, coming up, I'm doing several workshops this fall, but 3 coming up really soon in person. If you are near Cincinnati, Denver, or Boston, I'm going to be in all 3 places. So on September 13th, that's in just like a little over 2 weeks, I'll be in Cincinnati with the Greater Cincinnati Orff chapter. I hope you'll come out and join us there. It's going to be a really fun workshop, all about storytelling and how you can use stories and children's literature in your classroom. I'm also going to be a week later with the Rocky Mountain Orff chapter on September 20th. That's a whole workshop on critical thinking and Orff work. And so how you can use critical thinking, enhance your critical thinking, help your students with critical thinking. And so that's on September 20th. And then on October 4th, I'll be with the New England Orff chapter. And I don't remember which workshop I'm doing with it, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So come and join us. I just can't remember which one we decided on. Anyway, I'll figure that out. But if you're interested in any of those things, Cincinnati, Denver, or Boston, or the greater Cincinnati, greater Boston, greater Denver area, if you want to come and join us, I have links on my blog under the About Me tab, and also on my Facebook page if you want to learn more. Okay, that's all the housekeeping stuff. So I want to share about one new bulletin board that I'm like super excited about, one new book that's brand new to me, and then we'll get to my lesson idea for kindergarten with the first week, and a short little lesson on balance high, balance low, and how you can make it longer and more exciting. Okay, so I have loved K-pop for a long time. And when someone was like, hey, did you see that new K-pop thing on Netflix? K-pop, something about demons? I was like, I don't know, I'll watch it. But anyway, I've loved K-pop for a long time. And I have always wanted to do a bulletin board, but I've always been like, are my kids going to like it? I don't know. You know, like, I mean, I'm really into K-pop, but will they be? I don't know. So I like hesitated. And then it was like, finally, this is my moment. So I have this bulletin board called I Love K-pop, or you can also do a version of this as like, what is K-pop? Because it's not really about demon hunters at all. It's not at all actually about that. So there are a bunch of slides about what K-pop is. There's even a page that's like, what is K-pop? So talking about like the origins of K-pop, what it is, what makes K-pop K-pop. So for example, there's a whole page about South Korea, where does Korean music come from, things like that. Then there's some things that are specific to the K-pop genre. So why are groups called idols, or why are they called, why are there, what makes them who they are? So there's a big emphasis on, and look, it even kind of looks like Demon Hunters, like a little, but it looks like a fun K-pop stylized version. Like what makes K-pop K-pop, like so the dance, the costuming, the personalities, the culture, all of that is a part of this. Talking about some of the things you might see, light sticks, those show up in K-pop Demon Hunters. In fact, I have a whole page to help kids identify the light stick of their favorite group, because that's a huge part of K-pop culture and K-pop music. There's a whole page on just finger hearts. When people do this, it's a finger heart. What does that mean? Do you have to be Korean or understand Korean to like K-pop? No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Boy group, girl groups, things like that. Words to know, bias, stan. What does it mean? You could find out. And then I have a bunch of pages about current K-pop groups, or groups that are current-ish, that have released an album in the last few years, or just like really well known. And this is so that kids can go like, oh, I've heard of Stray Kids, or I've heard of whatever, or I've not heard of Blackpink, but I should, or Twice, or whatever. And so it gives them a little bit of a reference about what is K-pop and who are some groups that I might know. Because K-pop Demon Hunters, it does have like original music for the show, for the movie, right? But also there are groups that are like just legitimate straight K-pop from the actual K-pop industry, not written for this movie, but that are just actually in the movie. So like the very first song I heard, I was like, isn't this Twice? This isn't made for this movie. And no, it's not, but it was used in the movie. So I feel like this is a really cool moment in our culture where like kids are very excited about K-pop Demon Hunters or just K-pop in general. And then like in the actual K-pop Demon Hunters, you really do get sort of a look at what is the K-pop genre. And so like this is our chance to like jump on the bandwagon and teach kids some things in the process of also getting excited and sharing with them. So I will link this on the links page in case you're interested. But what is K-pop is a new bulletin board. It can be in your school right now. So anyway, that's something I'm very excited about. I just want to make sure I shared about that. Okay, also, if you want more pictures, I just posted on my Instagram and my Facebook some, and I'll post pictures when I have it actually up on the wall at my school. Okay, and you know, it's always like when I put a bulletin board up for the first time, I'm like, it needs a couple extra things. And so if I add those things and put them up, I will put them and add them to the set. So if you buy it now, you want to get those extras later, you totally can. Okay, a book that I found that I wanted to share that is, I wasn't sure about at first, but I'm excited about now. So there's this book called Sound, and the book's by Olga Fediva. It was not originally in English, it was translated into English. And at first I like pulled it out and looked at it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I was like, I don't know, it seems kind of sciencey. So let me just show you why I hesitated and then show you what I'm excited about. At first I was like, I don't know, it's kind of sciencey. Maybe I can like show my third grade teachers who do like a unit on the science of sound. And I could show it to them and like see if they could use it. I don't know. So sound, and it starts like, listen, what do you hear? We're surrounded by sounds, all sorts of sounds, not just music, but like breathing and ticking clocks and birds and kids kicking soccer balls, like all sorts of sounds you hear. What is a sound? So it goes into, you know, what you hear, it's the things, you know, all sorts of things, screeching, music, knocking, buzzing, whistling, talking. Sound is sound. It doesn't have to be formalized. It can be just any sort of thing. What are pitch, frequency, and volume? So some cool visuals here and talking about sound volume, how it's measured in decibels. And they use some words here that I would not use in class, like infrasonic, ultrasonic, things like that. So this is why I was like, ooh, this is getting kind of technical. How do we produce sounds? So it talks about the larynx and the tongue and the vocal folds, all of that. So like how you're making sounds, and then how you hear sounds. So your ears, your auditory ossicles, oh my gosh, tiny bones, and then has like visuals and stuff on the inside. This is when I was like, I'm going to give this to my third grade teacher. What is an echo? That's kind of cool. Talking about bats, using echolocation. When and why do birds sing? Again, there's a lot of text. So I was like, I'm probably going to give this to third grade. And then a whole thing about different kinds of birds, why they make different sounds, how they make different sounds, what sounds do animals make, and then try to imagine how noisy it would be, all these things together. So snapping, hold on, tiger snapping, shrimp, closing its jaw, making a sound. The Gulf corvina is an animal in the coastal waters in northern Gulf of California, like cicadas, locusts, katydids, mosquitoes, all these things that make sound. Right, and then what does it sound like underwater? That was a kind of a cool page to read, and I was like, I don't know, I'm interested. How do humans communicate with sound? So it talks a little bit about language and how the people do communicate. How do they communicate without sound? Right? What did the prehistoric world sound like? What did the ancient world sound like? What did the European Middle Ages sound like? So why would things be different? And then when you start getting into it, it talks about like medieval music, and how like they use music. What did early modern period centuries sound like? And now it's like, oh, I am interested again, because now this is like not just like random sound, but musical sounds, and also sort of like things that are influenced by the time. Like, why did composers use this? Well, the piano was invented in this period, or, you know, it's like starting to give you more information. That What did it sound like in the modern age? How can you write down music on a page and turn it back into sound? So now talking about written notation, which I thought was kind of fascinating. How could a group of musicians be better together? So then talking about like small groups, even from like chamber orchestra into symphony or things like that, small groups, all different sizes of groups, talking about that. How can you record sound? So a little bit of the history of that from way back in Victrolas and musical street instruments to today. How do you fill the world with sound? So transmitting sounds, changing sound. What do animals sound like? And I think this is another really cool thing that I'll pull out for all sorts of grades. But like in some countries, like in Italy, a rooster says chichirichi, and in Germany it says kikariki, and in Turkey it says uru uu, and then in the United States, in English-speaking countries, it says oink oink, and then in Japan it says boo boo. And China says hang hang. Like I just think just that is fascinating of like the animals making different sounds in different places. How can sounds make us feel better and feel worse? And then we're at the end of the book. So at first, well, kind of. There's still more in here, right? So at first I was like, it's very sciencey. I'm not sure. There's a lot of words. Would I really use this? And I realized, yes, in bits and pieces I would. And I think it'd be really fun to give to like a third grade teacher and say like, what would you use this? How would you use this in a science of sound lesson? And then bring it back to my third graders in music class and show them some of the later pages and talk about lots of connections about like, oh, well, we're learning about blah, 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 these instruments. How do those make sound? And so making connections with the book. So it's a book that I'm excited to like share with other teachers, but then also figure out like, how can we bring our lessons together and do, like co-op learning? Like how can we like cross curricular learn together? Like how can we share this book and pull things from it? But like I said, even just in the end where it's like animals, like they don't make actual, there's no language to what they say, right? But like instead of, the sound that we hear, what is an English ear write that down as? Cock-a-doodle-doo. What is a Spanish speaking ear here? Kiki-diki. What does so it's a very cool take on this idea about sound, how you'd use sound. I'll say it again. It's called Sound. It's written by Olga Fediva. I've put a link on the links page if you want to look that up, or if you want to not try and look it up yourself, but if you just want to go find it. And it's translated by Lena Traer, Traer, but Olga's Olga, last name Fadeeva, if you want to look it up yourself. But super cool book, very interesting, and something I'm going to share between me and the third grade teacher, probably other grades too. I just keep saying third grade because I know they do a science of sound lesson, but like you could use it with whatever grade you want. Okay, so new K-pop bulletin board, woo! Okay, new book about sound and how you can use sound and like co-op with other areas and homerooms content. And now let's talk about kindergarten. So my kindergartners, we do this thing at my school. I've talked about this on previous years. They call it Camp Kindergarten. So when kids come to my school, they are not placed with a homeroom teacher right away. Instead, they have like 4 or 5 days where one day they'll be with one homeroom teacher and then they shuffle up the groups. And then another day they'll be with another homeroom teacher and they shuffle up the groups. I don't know what their algorithm is. It's some crazy, they've been doing this a long time, they have a plan. But basically by the time the kids are through Camp Kindergarten, which is like 3 or 4 days, they will have spent a day with each homeroom teacher, each kindergarten teacher. They will also be mixed into different groups. So like 2 kids will be together one day and maybe not another day. So you can see kids, not just each teacher gets an eye on them, but then like you see them in different pairs and combinations. I don't know, it works. So then like instead of like, oh, here's your class, and you realize like I have all of the super energetic, high energy, high needs kids, and the other teacher's like, I only have the really, chill, slow, sleepy, like, whatever kid. So like you get a good mix of kids. So you can see them in different settings over the course of a couple days. And they don't do it just like day 1, day 2, because like kids change after like 2 or 3 days of being comfortable. In kindergarten, slightly more comfortable. They change and they adapt. So it's a cool concept. It's a cool idea. But for me, for the music teacher, it means because of the way things shuffle, I might have one kid 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, and not see other kids at all. So my first kindergarten lessons have to be kind of flexible and kind of repetitive and kind of like, I'm not gonna say throwaway, but like lessons that if certain kids don't get them, that like my curriculum isn't sunk, right? Like I'm not gonna start with like, the one must-have song or whatever in the first lesson, because some kids won't get it just based on how they shuffle and how they change. So in those first couple of days, I have to get kind of creative about things that are going to keep kids excited, keep kids interested, teach some procedures and some things like that, but also not get too in depth. And one of the little pieces of that lesson is the song Bounce High, Bounce Low. And you might go, oh, wow, David, that's an interesting choice because Bounce High, Bounce Low lasts for 20 seconds. Why would you program that? Or why would you plan that into your lesson, right? Well, I do it for a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's not the first thing we do. We do a couple like opening songs, things like that. We move around, whatever. When we're finally in a circle, finally sitting crisscross applesauce, which I have to explain what that is. But when we're finally in a circle, finally sitting crisscross applesauce, I say, I have a song. I know you just met me. I'm Mr. Rao. I'm the music teacher. I am not the PE teacher. I know we're not in the gym. But I have a song about bouncing balls. And I know that that's crazy because I am not the PE teacher. We're not in the gym. And actually, oh man, I don't even have any bouncing balls in this room. So that's kind of crazy that I've decided to teach this song. But anyway, it's a song about bouncing balls. So for right now, can you just pat on your knees while I sing? Here, I'll show you how it goes like this. Pat, 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 pat. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce the ball to Shiloh. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce to someone else we know. Bounce, 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 bounce. Very good. So guess what? I'm just going to pretend with my hands that I have balls that I'm bouncing with my hands, but I'm actually patting my knees. Let me do that again. It goes like this. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce the ball to Shiloh. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce to someone else we know. Bounce, 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 bounce. And so I'm saying that. I don't expect them to learn it and sing it right away, which is fine. But what I'm trying to get them to do is to just start to demonstrate a steady beat with both hands on their knees, right? And we do that 3 or 4 times until they like know it. They can sort of get it. Some kids aren't getting the steady beat. That's fine. I'm starting to try and remember that. But we're just doing a steady beat with our hands, right? And then I go, what if we pretended we have a ball? Because we don't have a ball. I can't believe I don't have any. But just pretend. And so we're going to bounce in the air. And so we're tapping, just playing in the air. Maybe we do that once, and maybe say, let's pretend our hand is the ball. Okay, let's just tap our hand. Okay, that's great. And so then we play around, we explore, we try a couple different ways. Again, the nice thing is because it's so short, you can make an adjustment every time. Bounce in the air, great, do it once. Bounce on your knee, great, do it again. Bounce your hand, okay, great. It gives you a chance to keep them interested because it's a bunch of tiny little snippets. And then I say, you know what? I just realized I was looking over there. I don't have any bouncy balls, but I have something that looks like a bouncy ball. And I run over and I grab one of the rainbow mallets, the mallet, the super soft foam and the rainbow colors, right? They come with lollipop drums and sound shapes and all sorts of stuff. Super soft, super easy for like young hands to play with. Okay, I know this isn't really a ball, but it looks like a bouncy ball. And so watch this. I'm going to hold, it's actually called a mallet, right? Because it's a stick. If it were just this white part with the red on the end, that's a stick. But because it has this like ball thing on one end, we call it a mallet. No, not all mallets look exactly the same, but we'll talk about that another day. Anyway, this ball on a stick, this mallet, what if we bounce this? Here, I'm going to hold really close. I'm going to hold out my hand. I'm going to bounce it. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce the ball to Shiloh. Bounce high, bounce low, bounce to someone else we know. Bounce, 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 bounce. So then, of course, I demo a couple times. The kids are watching. And then I give each kid a mallet. And we bounce in a couple different ways. We do on our knees like we had just practiced. We bounce on the floor or we're tapping on the floor. And then we start to explore. Wait, it says high and low. Bounce, high, bounce, low. Where's somewhere high on your body that you could bounce, because we bounced on our knees. That's not very high. Where could you bounce high in your body? And the kids are like, on your shoulder, on your head, on your ear. Cool, choose one. Okay, so there we are hitting our head. I'm always like, I hope the principal doesn't walk in right now as I've just given them mallets the first time and they're smacking their head, but whatever. So bounce high, bounce low. So we try it on our head. Now where's low? Low on your body. Maybe we stand up so that we can do our feet and then it feels really low. Or maybe we just do our feet even sitting down so they can explore high and low, right? What about if we did, like, we held out our arm like this and we went high and low? What if we went bounce, high, low, high, low, or just one high, low, low? You know, like we play around with that, bouncing back and forth. Then the next step is do stand up and do the top of your head and your feet if you hadn't done that already. So they really feel high, really low. And then I let them explore and I let them walk around the room. And my rule is, as long as it's not an instrument or something that looks like it can break, you can bounce on that thing. So kids go over and they hit the side of a tubano, which is an instrument, but not the sounding part. Or they find, you know, a door, they find a railing, they find a wall, they find a chair, they find all sorts of stuff, a puppet I had one kid do, and they just bounce the steady beat with that mallet while we're singing, while we're exploring, right? And then they move on to something new. We do it probably 3 or 4 times. They move to different things around the room, go find something else. So the reason I'm having them do this is it gives them a little bit of freedom and it lets them explore around the room in a sort of a structured way, because they're finding something to tap on where they can bounce the ball of the mallet. It's free to go wherever, right? So because they want to do that. They want to walk around and look around the room, but I want them to do it in a structured way. So I'm giving them a place to go look and find something so they can tap and bounce with the song. So I give them about, I don't know, 20 seconds between each version to find a new place. And then we explore, and then I say, okay, now my challenge is you must find something high up to tap. So as high as they can get on the cabinets, or as high as they can get on the door, or whatever, right? Now find something low. Okay, then this is fun because then they can find like the cart for the xylophones, or the, you know, my shoe, or like just the floor, right? So then they're figuring out high and low, and we're playing and exploring again, just tapping, right? We do this for a while and they do not tire of it. And maybe I go over to the piano and just play the song as we do it, or what, you know, and some kids are singing and some are not. I do not have a huge expectation for this because, again, it's like the first day, not even the first day, it's like the preamble to the first day of music. It's like camp, you know, kinder camp. So we're just exploring and playing around with it. And then they go around, find different things to tap on and play. It's super, super fun, and they love being able to hold a mallet on day one. And these things are so soft, there's no way they're going to like hurt anything really. But I do put in that disclaimer of like, you can go tap on anything as long as it's not an instrument and it doesn't seem like it will break. Because if it looks like, if it's, you know, little tiny electronics, don't tap on it. If it's an iPad, don't tap on it. If you're afraid that you're going to, if it's a window, maybe don't, you know, like something so they can explore and move. But it lets them go and tap. But we're not done. When we are ready, I have them hold on to the ball and mallet, and then they go put it in the canister where I keep all of these. So they go put their mallet away. And then, as an option, there are these books by Doreen Cronin and Scott Minchin. So the people who did Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type, is a series of books. One of them is called Bounce. I know I've shared about this before, but it like absolutely sinks in. So if you're like sinks, S-Y-N-C, sinks with this lesson. So if you have an extra few minutes, Bounce is really fun because the character in the book bounces and they get a bounce. Come on, let's bounce like a bunny. Hip hop, hip hop. Let's bounce like a frog. Kerplop, kerplop. Let's bounce to the left. If you'll bounce to the right. Bees bounce in the daytime, bats bounce in the night. So imagine all the different ways that you could have kids moving, bouncing, whatever around the room. It goes through a lot of different options and a lot of different things. So like super great for movement exploration, but you could also, if you really wanted later in the year, you could bring this back like with a steady beat and have them try and bounce with a steady beat. But for this day, we're just exploring and playing. So lots and lots of like visual and written prompts for kids to bounce and move in different ways. Super fun to explore. Guess what? This book is a part of a series. There's also Stretch and Wiggle. So super easy set of books that you should get for your classroom. They're probably everywhere used. You can probably find them pretty easily used because they're not new. Let's look at the publication date. 2007, so they've been around for a long time. And they're by a very famous author, so the authors of Click Clack Moo. So probably there are lots of copies of these floating around on the used book market, so go buy them used if you're interested. I'll make sure I put on the links page in case you want that. But Bounce High, Bounce Low doesn't have to be a super tiny little song. It can be longer. You can pull more out of it. These books are a fun extension, but not necessary. Even if you just want to do just the lesson sitting crisscross applesauce using your hands, you could. But the mallet is super fun to bring in. The books are super fun to bring in. There's a lot of options there. And exploring the room in sort of this fun, structured way is great for them because they want to do it. They love to be able to do it. And then you're giving them a chance to go and move and explore, but you're still giving them parameters about how and why. Okay, so that's my idea for kindergarten in the first week, just with Bounce High, Bounce Low. Of course, you can bring that back later if you want them to play on an Orff instrument, if you want them to play the melody later down the line in another grade, if you want them to play with structured movement, but this is just like an introduction to that story if you want. Okay, so bounce lesson, Bounce High, Bounce Low. I put the notation and stuff for that on my links page. I also talked about this book, Sound, by Olga Fadiva. Great, cool book. We talked about that. And then, of course, what is K-pop? Cool new bulletin board. If you're interested, I'll put a link to that on the links page too. I know next week is Labor Day, but I'm going to be back on Monday anyway because we have to teach the following day. So why not have another lesson idea? So I'll be back next Monday. If you are going to go and enjoy Labor Day and not think about work, good for you. But you can always come back and watch these videos. I post them on YouTube, I post them on Instagram, and I put them out as a podcast. So you can listen to them later if you want. And you can find that Make Moments Matter Music Education podcast wherever you find your own podcast. All right, well, I hope I'll see you next Monday. But if I don't, I'll see you the week after. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye.